Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to talk about the illusory nature of truth and the use of faith in one's life, religious or otherwise, to attain some semblance of truth. This world does not give you the real means to ascertain truth. This is 32.5 years into my life, and this is what I have accepted as true. As paradoxical as that is, this makes the most sense to me. It does make the most sense to me that a paradox would encapsulate my worldview, but to take it a step back and to start from the beginning, how I came to this quite skeptical, absurd point of view, could start with the illusory nature of the sensory experience. We've all been told that what you're actually seeing is an upside down version of reality, similar to that of when you're staring into a spoon and everything is inverted. The brain is able to interpret these light signals and, provide you with the right side up world. Whether or not that is true is a whole other thing in of itself. But we can essentially categorize that type of experience as hallucinatory or illusory, that what is actually being sensed is not what is being perceived, if that makes sense. But even a fact such as that, you're going to have to put faith into some type of scientific institution that did some type of study that made that claim. And, judging by the renown of that facility, that institution that released that study, you're able to say, yeah, those guys are legit. That's probably true, but I'm going to choose to believe it. So there we go with faith, in something that you can't know for sure in your current state, unless you were to go and conduct that study yourself. And I guess, is this a form of Gnosticism? This is one definition of Gnosticism, that, true faith can only be derived from the experience of the individual. To put faith in any type of institution or any type of idea, it may serve a purpose, some utilitarian way, but ultimately is not a derivation of true truth. Such a ridiculous concept again. So we can start to break it down piece by piece, but in our first category we have the inability to trust the senses. In our second category we have the inability to trust institutions. I know this may sound ridiculous and quite radical, but essentially any claim that is not verified by the individual, beyond that of the senses, because those are not verifiable, cannot be verified. Any claim made by the political, the scientific, financial institution, if any of them have ever lied, there's no way it's going down. Apologies, got cut off there. Anyways, we can be certain that our senses are playing tricks on us at times, that the sensory world is unreliable as a surefire way towards truth without faith. So we have to rule that out. We could consider institutions in the same light. If any head of any institution has ever lied, if they don't have a 100% streak, then we are certainly putting faith into facts that may or may not be true. So in order to achieve, in order to find something that is true, we have to rely on our own experience, something that transcends the sensory world. And this truth may not be okay. Unfortunately, this violates my typical format of video where I like to remain outside, but it's simply too busy where I live now to be able to do that on the porch without feeling too self-conscious, whatever. So essentially, without being able to grasp truth through the sensory experience or through authorities, institutions, we have to ask ourselves, if we want to have any sense of truth at all, any sense of what is real, we have to ask ourselves, and I don't really like to say my truth, but this thing that we call truth may, in fact, vary from person to person. I really do believe that every single person's worldview, ideology, etc., is shaped by the way that they have lived their lives up to that point. There are so many precognitive biases, cognitive biases, whatever you want to call that, where if you have, certain notions in your family, certain worldviews in your family are raised on certain worldviews, you could essentially be assured that somewhere deep in your subconscious that you're going to hold on to those views. So it's essentially each person is seeing reality through a lens based on, where they're coming from, nature plus nurture. We have to figure out what is real, what is true. And this may no longer mean what it used to mean in terms of strict, idea, this is true, we know this is true. We can begin to talk about what is good, but we can also begin to talk about what is funny. I've done a lot of study into what's been called shamanism, essentially. I've read Harner, read Iliad, I've listened to a lot of McKenna. I've done essentially the white guy research type thing on shamanism without having delved into any type of tribal situation myself. But one thing I learned somewhere along the lines was that laughter, humor, comedy is the shaman's greatest tool. There's something so undeniable about something that is funny that if say that you're on a bad peyote trip or something like that, if the shaman or if your trip sitter or whatever you want to call it in this strange neo psychedelic culture that we live in, even in the suburbs of Woodstock, Ontario, we find essentially neo shamans trip sitting for people going on extreme spiritual journeys. If you're able to make a person in that state laugh, you're able to free them of whatever stress, whatever anxiety, whatever bad trip they are experiencing. And it's not just a party thing. If you're looking at it from an extremely traditional spiritual perspective, it's what you're experiencing is something greater, something that you'll never forget, an event of extreme novelty that really amplifies the fact that your sensory experience can in fact show you something that is not observable by someone else, so that your perceived reality will not match that of someone else's. If you've ever wondered, how can someone not understand? How can someone just not see it? It's you have to understand that it's not only seeing, hearing, etc., but it's the entirety of experience, distilled into one cohesive worldview, which varies from individual to individual. And these worldviews go so deep that when someone experiences something contrary to their worldview, there's going to be some type of cognitive dissonance or some type of resistance, which would essentially prevent them from including that new experience in their worldview, or they would simply live in this weird contradictory manner, where things just don't make sense. The ability to integrate one's entire experience into a worldview essentially is the goal of philosophy. That's what I'm trying to do personally here. So I like to think humor, like what is funny, essentially has to be true to me. Like I can't deny when something's funny, and everyone has a different sense of humor, so that's fine. Maybe that's what this new concept of truth is that, you know, everyone is experiencing reality differently because of who they are, essentially. So I'm okay with that. I like to think that there is some objective truth, so I'd like to explore a little bit further in terms of asking, like, what feels good. And certainly there are different, like, there are different ways of perceiving that as well, based on time preference. Like something that feels good in the short term may not feel good in the long term, etc. You know, somewhat you can have way too much of a good thing and you can ruin it, etc., etc. So it's not maybe not what feels good, but just thinking about like what is right, like in terms of morality, in terms of right and wrong. And I have to accept that, like, my lens of what is right and wrong is built right into me. There's a sense of wrong. There's a spectrum of right and wrong. You know, there are certain things which I would have to say, like, that's fucked up. Pardon my French. But that I would like to think is like something objective. We could even say, like, to thrive, or simply to barely exist and to hang on to existence. I feel like nature wants to thrive. There's something, when you look at the natural world, you can begin to ascertain some type of truth, but I don't know, is an appeal to nature is also maybe not exactly what we're looking for. Essentially, to embrace the mystery of what is happening here, and if you're interested to explore it as a hobbyist, you know, as an experimenter, as a psychonaut, as a philosopher, that's the point of existence. To find something truly satisfactory, to find something that's, you know, you're truly made for in this world. And maybe you can make yourself, maybe you're made for it. This is the absurdity, this is the absurdist aspect of being, like, when you are a skeptic and you try to derive meaning from what you have essentially termed a world in which you can grasp no truth, that is where things do become extremely absurd. So, you know, we're touching on existentialism, we're touching on absurdism, touching on skepticism. We're standing on the shoulders of giants, and I don't really feel the need to look into too many authors or, you know, heads of psychology departments or anything like that anymore. I really do feel like, as long as you're actively thinking about things, even if you do reinvent the wheel, sometimes when you see through other, like, sometimes what you read affects your worldview so much as to create this type of impurity, I suppose. This would be in terms of, like, your individual perception of the world. Like, you are influencing your lens, you're tinting your lens with somebody else's lens. And, you know, if that experience, I suppose, resonates with you, there's no harm in it. Essentially, there's no harm in exploring any worldview, so long as you're not violating some type of morality or natural law. Like, I do believe, you know, in an inherent sense of right and wrong. I can't prove it, but that's just how I feel. I could see maybe some type of pathology that where, you know, right and wrong are not so clearly defined, but in the pursuit of truth, we find it very difficult to grasp, like, any reality. And without faith, you know, this used to be a religious faith in civilization, but the death of, you know, essentially the death of God beget the rise of the intellect and the worship of, the worship of the Enlightenment, the individual, the brain, like what humanity itself is capable of. But this was like the death of like some spiritual age, and essentially like this is where I really like to experiment with spiritual worldviews, because when you understand that the human drive towards religiosity, instead of being applied to an institutional religion like Catholicism, like Islam, et cetera, that faith is put into the institution. Like your prophets are fucking Tony Hinchcliffe, or Stephen Colbert, or your prophets are like Hollywood or Washington, Ottawa, whatever. Like these are the arbiters of truth, like heads of institutions, Joe Rogan. Like these become your people. We don't like to think of it like that, because like when we look back at the entirety of philosophy, we see absolute chads, like absolute kings. Marcus Aurelius, oh my God, just imagine. You find out that he was cucked hard, but essentially there's still this idealized view. Plato probably performed some homosexual acts, but it was the style at the time. I'm not going to sign off on it. Wrote some cool shit. I guess Socrates just kind of like cucked him too, just made him write all this stuff. But you know what I mean. I'm getting off topic. We look back at these absolute chads of philosophy, of civilizational influence, and when you apply it today, it's a joke. But you have to understand that because the age of gods and goddesses is long past civilizationally. I know we do have like growing religious movements, Islam, Christianity, everything is on the rise, but essentially, like from the top down, we live in a godless world. That doesn't mean they're right, but that's what's happening. The natural human drive towards religion essentially puts the institutional leaders on these pedestals, and they become arbiters of truth. So I honestly don't really see any bigger difference than, we used to consider the church fathers, the arbiters of truth. Now we consider like the technocrats and presidents, prime ministers, et cetera, arbiters of truth. Those are religious people who are all great, but when you really get down to it, the appeal to authority is just as crazy as an appeal to a God that cannot be understood or grasped. Oftentimes, like what God was explained to the people by like the church leaders. So I don't want to romanticize this this age when the church leaders were essentially the leaders of all civilization, the arbiters of truth. But there's one thing that is essentially missing from today, and that's this central role of the sacred. Even through all of the oppression, of the church and the institutions just coming down on the people, forced conversion, the violence and all of that, like we can still look at that age, and this is not limited simply to Christianity, but to all religions that have this sense of the spiritual, the sense of what is within, this something deeper than the material reductionist atheist worldview. We can see this central role of the sacred at the heart of it all, and that is what I feel is missing in this worldview today, at least the one that's being peddled by the masses. Trying to grasp truth without this aspect of life, like being integrated into the mass distributed worldview. I don't know if that's through school, through education, through computer games, through social media. Without this central thing, like being integrated, we are essentially a society that's cut off from its true nature, a society that denies these parts of life, and it's this denial that creates a huge hole inside. This hole, I feel, honestly, could be responsible for a lot of nihilism, a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, sense of meaninglessness. I don't have any goals to restore it in terms of some great campaign, but I certainly do want to talk to people that are interested about it, if they bring it up. So yes, this is essentially, in closing, just to wrap it up, truth cannot be grasped through the senses. We have to have faith in our senses in order to experience a sensory reality, in order to act in the world, and by acting in the world, we're able to survive, thrive, socialize, etc. We are not able to grasp truth in terms of institutional facts. This is scientists saying red meat causes cancer. Maybe, don't know. You ever lied? Yeah. Okay, that's it. You're done. Throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Unfortunately, you have to do it. What they say could be true. You could believe them. It may benefit you, it may not. This is the thing. This is why only the individual can truly ascertain what's happening. And, you know, with things like the placebo effect, with belief itself being so strong, it actually affects your ability to discern what's true based on like your own individual experience. But this is all we've got. So maybe just pick something to believe in and you see if it works out for you. If it doesn't, change. You know, keep your mind open to the fact that you could be wrong, but don't believe anything that doesn't serve you. Why give any mental space to something that you truly can't verify? Why? Cause yourself more stress? This is why I honestly think people with less, maybe less going on, like they're looking into stuff less, they're reading less. Maybe this is why those people are relaxed, and why people who are intellectual, so to say, get so stressed out. Obviously there are problems in the world, but we have to have the grace to understand what's in our grasp to truly affect. And you know, this is some serenity prayer, pretty sure. Anyways, it's been a little while, so thanks for listening. This is just a free-form video, so obviously you know how it is. I'm going to be able to get outside and make some more content for everybody very soon. Thanks for listening this far. This has been Mitch, formerly Wander and Wander, right now maybe Anti-Bliss. Who knows? But the channel is alive and well, so am I. And I hope you are too. Peace.